What's up everybody, welcome back. So after we turned our inventory system into components, we're gonna migrate it into the multiplayer project. So if you're not following the multiplayer series, don't worry, you can just keep going inside of the original project as well. I'm simply doing this so we can show a little bit better examples. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to migrate it and make sure everything works. If you like the series, please consider leaving a like. And if you want to get your hands on the project files, you can become a YouTube member or a Patreon. And then you will get access to some premium channels in the Discord. And those will also give you access to some downloads. So with all of this stuff out of the way, let's dive into today's video. So before we start actually migrating anything, we want to double check something. So let's open up our inventory project, and in here go to edit project settings, and you want to take a look at the collision tab. So over here we have an object channel called pickup, and that's set to overlap, and under the presets we have a pickup profile with query only, and that's using our pickup item. So if we go to our multiplayer project, we already added some pickups in here as well. So if we go to the project settings collision, over here we have pickup item that's set to overlap, and then we have the pickup profile for query only and the pickup item. So we want to make sure these names match so we don't create duplicates that we don't really need. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the multiplayer inventory project and rename the object type to pickup item. So over here, let's go to the multiplayer inventory project and then go to project settings. So collision, and then for the pickup, we want to edit it, and I'm going to call this pickup item and accept. So now this should be adjusted. And we are good to go to start migrating. So we can simply select all three folders in here, the inventory stackerbot and the UI folder. And we're going to right click and then say migrate. So we simply want to migrate everything, so that's fine. Let's click OK and let's migrate it into our multiplayer project. So the shooter Y content folder, and let's select it. So we already have the fonts in here and some UI stuff. So I'm simply going to say no to all, and that shouldn't be a problem. And everything migrated successfully. So now we can close our inventory project. We don't really need it anymore. And let's go back to our multiplayer project. So in here now we have all of our assets in place, and we can start making sure everything works. So first of all, let's open our inventory component character, and in here we have a input event for the toggle inventory, and as you can see we do not have the input action, so we want to create it. So let's go to our project settings, and this is 5.0, so if you have 5.1 you need to create an input action. So we're going to go to input and then create a new action mapping over here and simply call that toggle inventory. And I'm gonna use the T key for this, so T on my keyboard, and that should be good to go. So now if we go into the component, we should be able to compile and get rid of the warning over here. So we have our input fixed. Now because we already added other pickups, we have some duplicate stuff in here, like interactable actor interfaces, the UI, the HUD, and some stuff like that. So we're going to make sure that we keep only the stuff that we need. So first of all, let's start with the interface, and we're going to remove the interface from the inventory series and keep the interface from the multiplayer series. So what you want to do is go to the inventory folder over here and go to the BPI interactable actor, and we want to rename this to BPI interactable actor underscore alt. So we can simply tell which one is the correct one. Then we're going to open this up, and we're going to do the same thing for all of the functions in here. So interact with actor, let's rename it and give it a suffix. So that's going to be alt, and do the same for all three of them. So this is simply to make sure we don't delete the wrong functions. So compile and save the interface, and let's close it down. So now we can go to the interface folder BPI interactable actor. So that's under our framework, and then interfaces BPI interactable actor. So in here, we want to add an input to the interact with actor event. So right now we're using the BP hero base, and we also want to have an option to use our inventory component. So we're going to add a new input, and that's going to be our character inventory component. And make sure that we actually select our character component for the inventory. So that should be inventory component and then character. So we have a new input in here we can work with. We can compile and save this one. Then we need to open up our pickup, because that's actually using the interface. So we're going to go to our inventory and then BP pickup and open this one up. So in here we want to remove the actual interface. So we're going to go to class settings, and in here you can see we have the old interface implemented. So we're going to clear this one, and it's going to ask us if we want to keep the functions. So we're going to say yes. So this way we will have the events still here, but the interface is gone. Now we can add our new interface, and we're going to replace the calls. So over here, implement interface, we're going to implement our BPI interactable actor. And then we can simply replace the events. So over here, we need to grab the interact with actor. Let's double click it and make sure that we replace it. So we can simply ignore the character inventory component over here and simply, we can ignore the player character and simply use only the component pin. So get rid of the old event, and that's good to go. Then we also have the get interact hint text. So if we open this up, we want to get rid of this stuff and make sure that we paste it in the correct new interface function. So we're going to open that one, paste it in here, make sure we plug the result in here, and we're going to enable the hint text manually. So now we can get rid of this function, get interact hint text old. So we can simply delete that one. And then I think we have the item name visibility over here. So we also want to grab the new event for that one and simply replace the old one. So move over the pins and get rid of the old event. And that's good to go as well. So we do not have the auto pickup function in here, so we don't need to worry about that one. So we can compile and save it, and we have the interface replaced for the pickup. So we want to do the same thing for the container. So we're also going to open up our BP container, and in here we also want to get rid of the interface. So let's go to class settings and remove the old interface. Do we want to keep the events? Yes, we do. And then we're going to add the new interface. So that's BPI interactable actor. And make sure that we grab the correct events. So interact with actor. Let's add the new one. And make sure we replace it. So that's over here. Get rid of the old call. And then we also have the interact hint text. So that simply says open container. So we can simply grab the text in here and make sure that we add it in the new one. And then we're simply going to enable hint text by hand. So that's good to go. Get rid of the old function. We don't need it anymore. And for the item name visibility, I don't think we have that in here for the container. No, we don't. So we should be good to go, and the container is done as well. So let's compile and save that one. And now we are ready to move on to the component for the character. So let's open up our hero base character, characters folder, hero base. And in here we want to add our new character component. So we're going to add a new component, and that's the inventory component for the character. Then we need to make sure that in the event graph we make some adjustments to the interface stuff. So we're going to look for the interface events that we have in here. And let me see, where are those? So let me just search for interact. That's probably a little bit easier. So the interactable actor, and then over here, interact with actor. So we have the on component begin overlap for the mesh, and in here we have a new interface. So we want to make sure that we have our character inventory component plugged in here. So we can simply grab it from the components and plug it in. Then if we move down a little bit, we have the component end overlap for the mesh. And in here, we need to make sure that we actually grab our character component as well. So if we have a container open, we need to close it. And that's something we didn't need to do before. So we're going to go to after the interactable actor setter that clears it. And then we're going to grab our inventory component character. And from the inventory component, we're going to get the opened container. And we want to make sure this is valid. So we're going to drag off the opened container and grab an isValid node. Plug it in over here. So if the opened container is valid, we want to leave the container. So we're going to call our leave container trigger event, and that's on the component. So drag off the component and call leave container trigger. So this goes into the isValid pin, and then continue to the HUD set interact hint. And if it's not valid, simply continue to it directly. So that's good to go as well. And then the last thing we want to do is go to our server interact with actor event. And in here, we also need to plug in our character component. So we're going to grab our inventory component character and simply plug it in over here. And then we also want to add an isValid node in here, by the way. So we want to make sure that if we already have a container opened, for example, and we press our use key again, it's not going to reopen it and mess everything up. So what we can do is grab our inventory component character and then the opened container, paste it over here. And again, we're going to check if the opened container is valid. But this time we're only going to continue if the opened container is not valid. So from the not valid pin, drag off and continue to interact with actor. If we already have a container opened, we're not going to interact with other actors as well. So that's why we're not doing anything in here. So this should take care of our interact events in the hero base character. So we can compile and save that. And then we can continue getting rid of the old interface. So before we get rid of the interface entirely, let's make sure that we open up our inventory character component. And in here we have the begin and end overlap meshes events. So if we look for begin overlap mesh and end overlap mesh, so those events are actually on our hero base character. So we don't need them in here. So what we're going to do is simply delete those. And we can do the same thing for our begin overlap sphere and for the end overlap sphere. So make sure you grab all of those and delete them as well. So as you can see, those are calling the old interface and we don't need them anymore. These are on our hero base character and those are using the correct interface. So we can get rid of them on the character component. Close it down, and now we can go inside of our old interactable actor interface, so the one from the inventory, and we simply want to search all references to these functions and replace them with the other interface. So let's right click, find references, and then click the little binocular here. So this will make sure that everything shows up, and we can simply double click it. So this is the actual interface. We don't need to replace that one. And the other one is inside of our character. So this is the inventory component character. And in here, we simply want to replace this call to the interact with actor from the new interface. So let's drag off the interactable actor and let's call interact with actor. And that's the message function over here. Make sure we move over the pins. And we can get rid of the old call. So the component, that's good to go, and we don't need to plug in the player character, so that's fine. Compile and save it. And now go back to the interface and search for the next function. So set item name visibility alt, find references and make sure there's none left. So this is only in the interface itself, so that's good to go. And then we have the get interact hint text. So let's find references as well. And again, that's only inside of our interface. So there's no references left to this interface and we should be pretty much good to go. So let's go back to our inventory component character. And in here, input action interact and server interact with interactable. So those are actually on our character as well. So we can grab this stuff and just delete them. So that should take care of the interface. The next thing I'm going to do is go to my gameplay folder and then loot. And in here for the pickup info table, I'm going to rename it to pickup weapon info table. And I'm going to explain later why I'm doing this. So for now, let's just rename it and go with the flow. So that's done as well. Then we want to go into our framework folder, and in here we want to add the components to our player controller and the game mode. So we're going to go to the shooter game mode and in here add a new component, and that's going to be our inventory component game mode. Compile and save, and then go to the shooter player controller, and in here also add a new component, and that's going to be our inventory component controller. And again, compile and save that one as well. So we have most of the stuff in place. Now let's go to our hero base character. And in here we have the throw item direction component. So in the viewport, let me see. We don't actually have the component yet, so we're going to add that because the component we used in the other project. So we're going to add a new component, and that's an arrow component. So this is the location where the items will be dropped from if we drop them from our inventory. So I'm going to angle it up a little bit so it throws them in the air. Let's rename it, although that's not really the most important thing. So this is our throw item direction. And what we do need to do is make sure that we add the proper tag to it so our inventory system can find it. So on the right side over here, we want to add a component tag. Let's click the plus sign and we need to call this inventory comp. So inventory comp. And this will make sure that our inventory system knows which component it needs to look for. So compile and save that one as well. And then inside of our in-game HUD, we need to fix our item counter. So if we go back to the inventory folder and then widgets, we have our in-game HUD. And in here in the graph, we need to fix the item counter branch where we remove the third person character. So in here, we need to grab our hero base character. And from the hero base character, we actually need to grab our inventory component so we can hook these back up and then go to the array element and get the inventory component character. And from that component, we should be able to plug it back into the player inventory getter. So this will work as well. And we can compile and save that. And now we should be pretty much good to go and the pickups should work. So let's run a little test and see how everything goes. So if we open up our level, we probably want to add a few pickups to it so we can actually do some proper testing. So let's open up the viewport. And in this level, we already have a few of the weapon pickups. So we can simply leave those in place and we're going to add some of the loot pickups to it. So let's go to our inventory folder and then simply grab our BP pickup. So we need to set it up. So for the item row name, I'm simply going to make this the orb. And then for the item contents, I'm going to add orbs to it. So this is going to have 2 orbs, for example. And let me duplicate it a few times so we have something to work with. So let's save it. And for now, I'm just going to run a solo test. So we need to make sure we start in the main menu. Solo game, and then let's do a free for all so I can test in peace. And as you can see, we have our pickups in here. So if I press the T key, my inventory opens. So that's working as well. And I should be able to pick these up and they appear in my inventory, and I can drop them as well. So that seems to be working, and our other weapon pickups are still here as well, and they should still work. So we can pick that up, and we can still pick up ammo, for example. So all of that stuff is working. So we have both of the pickups in place and functional, and I'm not gonna merge everything, and I'm gonna explain in a little bit why that is. But first, let's continue working. So you might have noticed some errors popped up after testing, but those were simply related to some physics that were enabled on my player start, and that had nothing to do with the actual inventory project. So that's just Unreal being weird. We're gonna ignore those and we're gonna keep working. So inside of the inventory project, we had the save system where clients needed to select their save slot manually to make sure they had separate inventories from other players. And inside of the multiplayer project, we actually have different profile save slots. So we can simply use the correct profile save slot to make sure that each player has its own inventory. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to open up our inventory component controller. And the first thing we want to do is go to event begin play and then scroll a little bit to the back. So we have a branch is server, and after that we set the save slot name and load the inventory. So we're going to grab all of that stuff and simply delete it. And if we go down a little bit, we have these input events for keys 1, 2, and 3, and those will set other save slots. So we can also get rid of that stuff. Simply select all of it and get rid of it. And now we're going to create a new event to make sure everything works. So let's create a custom event and call this something like a setup inventory save game. And we want to give it one input, and that's going to be a string. So let's call it inventory slot name and turn it into a string variable. Then we want to drag off here and we want to append the string. Now I'm going to move over this to the B pin, and inside of the A pin I'm simply going to type inventory underscore. So it will give a prefix to the player's slot name to make sure we don't override it. And then we want to store this inside of our inventory slot name, so we can grab it from the variables and simply plug in the return value. Now we want to make sure that we grab our inventory component character and we make sure that it's valid. So we're going to drag it from the components, simply drag it in here, and we can turn it into a validated get. So if we right click, convert to validated get, plug it in over here. So this is pretty much the same as getting the inventory and hooking it up to an isValid node, but this is just combined into one simple node. If it's not valid, we're going to delay until next tick and then go back to the beginning of the isValid node. And if it is valid, we can continue. So then we want to call our load inventory save game. So drag off here, load inventory save game. And after that, we want to call the server event. So we're going to drag off again and call server load inventory from save game. I'm sorry, that's actually an event on the character component. So drag off the character component and then look for server load inventory save game. Plug this one in over here. And then for the player inventory, we can actually grab that. So if we grab our player inventory save game, and then from the save game, we can get our player inventory and simply plug it in over here. And now we should be good to go. So this will load the actual save game, and this will pass on the information from the save game to our inventory component character. And now all we need to do is make sure that we call this event from somewhere. So that's what we're going to do next. Let's open up our shooter player controller. So that's inside of the framework folder, shooter player controller. And in here, in the event graph, we have an event called load profile. So that should be up here somewhere. Over here, so load profile. And in here, we're going to make sure that we also load our inventory profile. So we can do that right after we grab the save game, for example, right before the switch has authority. So let's make a little bit of room over here. And then we can simply drag in our inventory component controller, drag off here, and we want to call our setup inventory save game. Plug it in over here, and then make sure that we grab our correct inventory slot name. So that's simply our player profile slot from the variables. So get it and plug it in over here. So this should make our save games work for all players. And we are actually not using the inputs anymore to select the save slots. So this will make everything a little bit cleaner. So we have the save games taken care of, and now we want to take a look at the HUD. So we actually have two HUDs in here now. We have one from the multiplayer project and one from the inventory project. So we're going to get rid of the HUD from the inventory project and only keep the one from the multiplayer project. So how are we going to do that? Let's go to our inventory widgets folder, and in here we're going to rename the HUD to _old. So we have our widget blueprint in-game HUD, and we want to rename it, and we're going to add a suffix old. Then first of all, let's make sure that we open up the old HUD, and in here for the graph we want to make sure that we grab our debug item counter, but we need to grab it from the designer as well. So let's go to the designer first, and in here we have our debug item counter border, so we can simply press Ctrl+C to copy it. And then we're going to go to our widgets folder and then our in-game HUD from the shooter game. And in here you want to select the canvas panel and press Ctrl+V, so we're pasting the debug item counter. So we have our player names in the lower left corner, so I'm going to move the item counter to the top left corner for now. Then go back to the HUD from the inventory project and go to the event graph. So right click the item counter function and we're gonna copy it. Go to the multiplayer HUD, go to the graph, and in here we can paste the function. So right click, paste function. That should be good to go. Then we want to make sure that we actually call it in the event graph. So let's go to the event graph and we want to go to our event construct in here. So that should be over here. And at the end, we simply want to make sure that we run our item counter if we are the server. So we're going to grab a branch and simply plug in an isServer check. And if we are the server, we want to call the item counter in a loop. So we're going to grab our border for the debug item counter. And first of all, make sure that it's visible. So set visibility and set it to visible. Plug this in the true pin. And then we simply want to call our debug item counter function, plug it in over here, and then add a delay of 1 second and make sure it loops. So every second we're updating the item counter to make sure we have something to debug. So compile and save, and that should take care of the counter. So now we want to close our multiplayer HUD and make sure that we are inside of our inventory HUD, so the one with the _old behind it. And in here we want to make sure that we grab our add line to newsfeed event, and we're also going to add old behind that one, so _old, and save it. Now we can close it down and we want to go to our inventory folder and open up our inventory component controller. So not the shooter player controller, but the inventory component controller. And in here we have a reference to our HUD that we want to replace. So the widget blueprint in-game HUD. First of all, we're going to rename it and add alt behind it. Then we're going to create a new variable, and that's going to be our other in-game HUD. So widget blueprint in-game HUD. And for this one, make sure that we select our in-game HUD. So not the old one, but the one from the multiplayer project. With that done, we want to grab our HUD update newsfeed function. So over here. And in here, we want to replace the call for the add line to newsfeed. So right now, we're calling add line to newsfeed old, which is on the wrong HUD. So we want to grab our new HUD variable and from here, add line to newsfeed. And make sure that we move over the pins. So we can get rid of the old call. And then do the same thing over here. So again, move over the pins and get rid of the old call on the old HUD. So that's good to go. Then we want to remove the calls from the UI in-game HUD inside of the event graph. So let's go to our event graph. And let's find the references to our UI in-game HUD. So right click, find references. And in here, we simply want to delete the call and then search for the other one and also delete the call over here. And now we can actually get rid of the old variable. So let me double check. Sorry, we can get rid of the function. So over here, UI show in-game HUD, we can delete that one. So we're actually showing the other HUD and we also have calls to show that one. So we can simply remove this stuff and that shouldn't matter. So we have the call removed and then we can remove the HUD set interactable hint from our event graph. So let's double check. We have a HUD set interact hint. And we can simply grab this and get rid of it. And then we also have all of the references left to our old HUD. So let's find references. Oh, not replace, but find. And we can simply replace them. So we're going to drag in our new HUD and get rid of the old one. And make sure we do it for all of the references in here. So that should be good to go. And now we should be able to delete our old HUD. So simply delete the variable and that's gone, and compile and save it. Now for the client update newsfeed. So we simply want to go to the event on the event graph and I'm going to rename it to make things a little bit easier later. So let's call this client HUD update inventory newsfeed. Almost there. Well, good enough for now. So compile and save that one as well. And with that stuff done, we can go inside of our shooter player controller. So let's close this down, go to framework shooter player controller and go to our show in-game HUD function. So all the way at the end, we want to make sure that we store the reference on our component. So we can simply grab our component from the variables, grab the inventory component controller, and we want to set our in-game HUD. Plug it in over here and simply grab the reference from the function over here and plug it in. And that should be good to go. So I think we have our HUD replaced and now we can make sure that everything is compiled and saved. And then go to our inventory widgets folder, grab the in-game HUD alt and simply delete it. So there's no asset references, so that should be good to go. and all of the events and functions that we simply deleted were handled by the interface, so those are picked up by the interface and handled on the new HUD. So this should pretty much work. Let's give it a little test and see how things go. So let's run a game, and this time I'm gonna run a multiplayer game to make sure that all of that stuff is working as well. So let me set this up quickly and then I'll be back. So the game is launching, and let's see if we still have a HUD and if everything is working. So that seems to be good to go, and over here I'm the client, so we have a HUD, and I also have my player inventory, and if I pick something up over here, we also have a newsfeed, for example, so I think we are good to go, and we have most of the stuff still working. And for the server, you can see the item counter displays and the HUD still displays. We can open our inventory, so all of that stuff is pretty much good to go. So again, we have the simulate errors that have nothing to do with the actual project, so we're going to ignore that stuff. One last thing I want to do in this video is take care of the item name widget blueprint. So we have a duplicate of those as well. So those are the names displayed above the pickups, and we have them in the multiplayer and in the inventory project. So we're going to keep one of them. So again, we're going to start renaming with the pickup item name to old. So in the inventory widgets folder, we have the widget blueprint pickup item name. We're going to add a suffix _old. And with that done, we can go to the inventory folder and open our BP pickup. Now we want to get rid of the references in here. So let's right click and find references. So inside of the event graph, we have two. In event begin play, let's delete it. And over here, event set pickup name visibility, item name visibility. Get rid of it over here as well. Then you want to select the actual widget component. And in here, we need to change the class. So over here, now we have pickup item name old. And we want to make it our pickup item name from the multiplayer project. With that replaced, we can make sure that everything is working again. So we need to get rid of the cast. No, we don't need to get rid of the cast, sorry. We can simply grab our new component and plug it in over here. And then also make sure that we grab the component and plug it in over here. And now we should be pretty much good to go. So if we compile and save this, this is casting to the correct pickup name, so that should work. So I think that's really all we need to do. If we close it down, go back to the widgets folder, we can grab our old pickup name and delete it. And we are actually still referencing it. So let me double check. Let's go back to the pickup. And over here, so what's the reference? Oh, this is an old reference. So it's actually casting to our pickup name old, but the name of the node didn't change. So let's get rid of the cast in here, and we want to cast to our pickup item name. Plug it in over here. So now this won't match either. So we need to set the text item name. And in the other one, that's set text pickup name. So select that function and then move over the pins so we can get rid of the old call. And over here, we're simply setting the visibility. So that should be good to go. Now we can compile and save and try removing it again. So let's go to the widgets folder, pickup item name old, delete it. And this time there's no references. So let's get rid of it. And by the way, we can do the same thing for the newsfeed because we already replaced that as well. So let's grab the newsfeed widget blueprint from the inventory project and simply get rid of that one. So I think we have most of the stuff merged. So save it and let's have a little check to see if everything is still working. So the game is launching. And now we should still have the pickup names, so that's still working. And those are also working for the other pickups, so that's good to go. And let's double check the newsfeed row, although we already checked that's working, and it's still working. So that's good to go. We have most of the stuff migrated and no errors. Well, except for the simulate errors, but we're gonna ignore those. So for now, I'm gonna keep it the way it is, and I'm gonna explain why. So right now we have two different pickups. We have a BP pickup over here, and this is actually the pickup that goes inside of our inventory, the pickup that saves and loads and that we can drag around and do all kinds of stuff with. And we also have our gameplay loot pickups, and those are the weapon and ammo pickups that we're using inside of the free-for-all and team deathmatch, for example. And I kind of feel they serve a different purpose. So in another project, I actually migrated it all the way and merged the structures and data tables and all of that stuff as well. But then you're going to end up with one big data table, and the data table will have options which are not valid for each pickup. So for example, we have the auto pickup, is ammo pickup. Those belong to the actual weapon pickups that we created earlier, and those have nothing to do with the loot pickups. And I feel they pretty much serve a different purpose because they serve a totally different game mode. So if we are playing something like an open world game where we have an inventory, we can drag stuff around, we can craft, we can do all kinds of stuff, then we want to use our BP pickup inventory stuff. But if we're simply playing like a Call of Duty like game for a quick free-for-all match, it doesn't really make sense to have those inventory options and to have everything saved and stuff like that. So in my opinion, if we're merging all of this stuff, that will only make things more confusing. And right now we simply have two different options we can choose from. Each one has the correct settings in its own data table with its own structure, and everything just makes a little bit more sense. So yes, some stuff is kind of halfly overlapping each other, but in my opinion, this is the way to go. You can still try and merge all of the structures and things like that. I don't feel it really has a purpose, so that's why I'm keeping it like this. So I notice we still have the interactable actor alt in here, and we can get rid of that one as well, so that shouldn't cause any problems. And now we are done migrating the projects. So that's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching everybody, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like, and I'll be back soon for more. Talk to you later guys, bye bye.